Good evening, Graham.
Hello, Charles.
Welcome. Tuesday night. I spent all day discussing church matters. It's a different kind of day.
I spent all day discussing Churchill matters.
Well, as did Donald Trump recently.
Well, I bet you Donald Trump's never read anything about Churchill.
It's a depressing enough world without having to see his change of mind every few seconds now, let alone every day. But anyway, there we go.
Oh, I've got a quick interruption, Charles.
Yeah.
Well, I get sent emails in my capacity as a senior reporter at the Harrogate Advertiser,
Yeah.
and you get a lot of good ones, but like some rubbishy press releases and PR things. Well, the latest one, which I thought was quite good, and this is what it said in the subject bar: 44% of people in Yorkshire notice hair or scalp issues when stressed.
What? Can you think of more pointless pieces of research than that, Graham?
Well, they got me to read the rest of the email, though, which is about some coal tar shampoo brand by Polytar. But I'm not going to use the press release because obviously it's not worth it.
It's not exactly local to Harrogate. Graham, you and I, we just live. What on earth's the point of worrying about hair? What is the point?
Yeah, it's not the fact people worry about hair, it's the fact that they've worked out how many people worry and what they worry about when they worry about hair. I mean, that sounds like a film. What a book. What we worry
Graham,
about
it's
when we
very
worry about
simple.
hair.
Hair today, gone tomorrow. Just
Yeah,
live with
thank
it.
you. Mm. I've also got some bad aphorisms. I'm going through a phase of coming out with bad aphorisms. I don't know why, they're just popping in my head. So here's one for you. Graffiti is done by people who can't afford to advertise. And secondly,
Yes,
crime is misplaced ambition.
I think the second one is excellent. The
Mm.
first one, you could do a bit of work on that.
Pretty poor. I agree. It's pretty poor.
Well, I think the second one's got possibilities.
All right. Anyway, that's the end of aphorisms for tonight.
Thank you on behalf of the Aphorism Society. Excellent. Now, Graham,
Yes.
um, you have had a weekend, and I'm always nervous when you have your accidental celebrity encounters in Harrogate. And that sometimes your celebrity encounters, well, to put a mild point on it, they can go wrong. But first of all, who have you spotted? Why and where?
Well, as I've said before, the great BBC broadcaster and correspondent Katie Adie, who I interviewed once at the Crown Hotel,
Oh,
I once
yes.
said to her that everybody's lucky at something in their life, and I am lucky at bumping into people, particularly bumping into famous people.
Mm.
And she said, Graham, that's not luck. That's been observant. Well, I think she was actually wrong because I do bump into famous people. So Monday, I was going to 108 Fine Art Gallery to see two
Mhm.
great female artists,
Mhm.
one from Scotland, one from the East Coast of Yorkshire. And I was behind schedule because I went to Red House Gallery first in Harrogate to see a great one-day sale with Peter Blake's and
The pop up
Bridget Riley's and all
art.
sorts. It was
Mm.
fantastic one-day sale. So I was late and then I had to park in a different position because the player where I usually park near Colmath Road wasn't available. And
Mhm.
then I was late for the gallery, so I was walking up a hill I don't usually walk up. And as I came to the exit of the hill in Colmath Road, I walked straight into Kemi Badenoch, Tory party leader. Couldn't avoid
Why
her.
was she in Harrogate?
Well, she was with Kevin Hollinrake, the Tory party chairman,
Yeah,
also
Tory.
MP for Thirsk and Malton, and
Mm.
Andrew Jones, former Harrogate Tory
Former
MP,
Harrogate MP.
because she'd just given her keynote address at the Tory party spring conference at
Yeah.
Harrogate Convention Centre. And she was out on a walkabout to visit shops and businesses on Coldbath Road. So I walked right into them unavoidably. And so I was a bit excited because I didn't expect to see to
No,
see her.
I mean
And
you'll
so,
you'll know Andrew Jones, of course, and
so yeah, but
yeah.
as soon as I saw her, I got quite excited. And then my next thought was to say something rude. And then I thought, well, you can't say something rude to someone who's a guest in Harrogate next to the former MP. And also, in a democracy, you have to be polite to people in general, unless you're engaged in a political debate. So instead, I went, Kemi, like I was her best friend, and walked straight up to her and shook her hand, and then had a chat with her.
How did that go? That's the bit I'm always interested in, Graham. You had a sort of
Well,
bold front there, shouting a name out. Where did you go
well,
next?
Andrew Jones was nice. Kevin Holrick looked a bit suspicious. Kemi was nice, which that sort of phrase does stick in my throat a bit, but she was nice in person as opposed to in PMQs.
Mm.
Uh, but because I didn't ask her cliched questions, which you get cliched answers about, I know all about her views on foreign policy and
Mm.
British politics, which I mostly don't agree with. Instead, I talked about me, which obviously is
What?
exactly what Kemi came to Harrogate for.
And what did you tell her about you that would have absolutely charmed
No, it
her?
was me on the paper, and she was interested in
That's a fair
how the
enough thing to mention. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
how the paper was, and I explained I was the last person in Harrogate.
Mm.
Blah blah blah. I said it was great because it meant I
Last
could do what I
journalist
wanted.
standing.
So yeah, that was it. My Kemi Baddock encounter.
Did she have any advice for you, Graham?
No, she didn't strike me. She was very smiley, much more approachable in real life than you'd imagine from watching her on TV. But she didn't strike me as someone who was going to be loose of tongue.
Well, anyway, it's exciting, Graham, that to have an encounter there. And no,
And the
great.
next day, I went to a cafe with Sarah in the morning,
Yeah.
where I don't usually go. At a time, I'm not usually there. And as I was getting up to leave, I walked
Mm.
straight into Gareth Southgate, the former England football manager.
Who lives, of course, by Fewston Reservoir.
Yeah, that makes it's more like I meet Gareth and Harrogate than Kimmy Badnock, but it was still uncanny timing.
Any advice from a Scotsman to an Englishman?
No, I always praise Gareth to his face when I meet him because I think he was a brilliant England manager and he's a nice bloke. So, and he's had stick from various people in the past, so I'm
Mm.
always nice to him. I'm not going to I also admit to being a Scotsman. I admit to
Which
Scotland being not usually good at football.
no, which cafe, Graham?
It was Fik, Fik, the Scandinavian trendy one in the Montpellier quarter.
Of course,
Very
Gareth
nice
would go
coffee.
there. Yeah, of course, Gareth
Yeah,
would go there.
yeah, obviously, yeah.
I believe he
So that
sometimes
was it.
meets up with Micah Richards, doesn't he? I think that's what usually happens. I think they
Oh
meet up.
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. No, he
Mm.
wasn't there. But yes, that's 2 days, two encounters, purely by chance in places I wouldn't normally be, at times I wouldn't normally be there.
Well, there would have been a time, Graham, when Harrogate at its peak, of course, as a spa town, you would have been bumping into any number of government ministers on their way up to Scotland to do some grass shooting. So
Oh yeah,
times
or in the
changing.
19th century it would have been Oscar Wilde, or even Karl Marx, because Karl Marx took the waters in Harrogate
He
in the
did.
1840s, I think it was.
He did. He did indeed. Made his marks in Harrogate, indeed. Now, Graham, talking of water, um, this is quite late to be suddenly analysing this particular film, although it did feature in the season of awards. And this is the small scale success and nature of British comedy drama film, The Ballad of Wallis Island, that I very much was disappointed that it didn't seem fit to be given an award. I thought it's great that I swear and the actor from I Swear won the Actor of the Year. I would love the awards over here to acknowledge The Ballad of Wallis Island for being the miraculous piece of work that it is. And I think it deserved to have been more noted than it was in the awards the other day.
I think it's a good film, but I don't agree. It I started off thinking this could be a great film, and by the end I realized it wasn't. And the reason I came to that conclusion was that it was basically the storyline was basically whiskey galore, the little locals in a beautiful but remote part of the British Isles
Mm.
act like they're a bit stupid, but actually they're cleverer than the with a little bit of actually quite a big dollop of the Detectorist by Mackenzie Crook,
I can
where
see
he
that.
took
Yeah.
the whiskey galore approach to the English southern countryside and
Mm-hmm.
English folk traditions. And
Mm.
the film is basically an amalgam of those two traditions with comedy script from Tim Key and Tom Basden
Yeah.
based on their short film. And the short film was ages ago. It won an award at the Edinburgh National Film
It
Festival,
did.
which
It
we were
did.
at in
Mm.
2007.
It did.
So it's quite a long time. And it
Mm.
started off by trying to do those two things at the same time and trying to be, sharp and funny, but also quietly deep and reflective. And at first I thought, ooh, this is working. They've nailed this. And the quiet, reflective bits are very good. A bit like the Detectorist is very good at being
Mm.
quietly, understatedly reflective. But then the drama had to come in, and the more dramatic it got, the less convinced I was. And Carrie Mulligan's character and the performance almost upended the whole film, I thought. She was clearly a much better actor than either Tom or Tim for obvious reasons. And it felt like as soon as she was in it, it felt like a film. not like real life. And then she departed the scene before the end in a not satisfactory manner. It didn't help the script that she left like that. And it never quite, it wasn't funny enough to be a great comedy. And it wasn't beautiful enough or deep enough to be a great bittersweet drama. And so it ended up just being better than most British film comedies, which are mostly sentimental, cliched claptrap. It was better than that. And that's where I agree with you. It wasn't one of those terrible ones that the British keep on making. But I don't think it started off so well, it just couldn't continue that standard to the end.
I think the Kerry Mulligan factor that is partly deliberate. That the character she's playing outgrew the man that she was making the music with. There was something more about her. That was fair enough. I don't feel that it was because it was a movie star performing in the film. That I think it was in keeping with the character herself. She was more than either. I didn't feel that
This
was
is
acting
this is
limitations
what
of the two writers. I didn't feel that.
I got a distinct feeling that it was supposed to be a partnership. They're a musical duo, a sort of like folk version of Ed Sheeran. If Ed Sheeran was a man and a woman as opposed to just a man. They're a folk duo who'd made it big
Mm,
and then split up. I
yeah.
think she'd moved on from him rather than vice versa
Oh,
in
absolutely, no
reaction
doubt
to him
about
doing a
that.
solo album partly. But I got the distinct feeling that she was a much stronger character than him. And I didn't believe that 10 years earlier, when they were together in the musical duo and there's a
Mm.
love item, that he would have been stronger than her. I think he should have been stronger than him even then. And I didn't think the dynamic between the two of them eventually worked.
I didn't feel that.
Mm.
I agree that she was the stronger of the two personalities.
Yeah.
What about you? The other element you mentioned was about the cleverness of the locals, a sort of different
Yeah.
form of cleverness
Mm.
that they always knew more.
About
Which
life.
it kind of reminded me of Local Hero from that point of view.
Yeah, yeah. Well, of course, Bill Forsyth, he's still part of his fantastic films in the 80s and early 90s from Whiskey Galore and old
Mm,
Scottish films like that.
mm. I mean,
He was just an updated modern
I did think
version.
it was in keeping with that.
Mm.
I also felt it captured loneliness, how wealth doesn't compensate for loneliness, and I thought there was a quiet beauty to it because of that. I mean, the lead character, in his own way, he wanted to create magic in a different way from just being able to do it through the money. He wanted, for both his own reasons and because he actually wanted to bring the couple back together again. I thought, I mean, that to me was not just because he had the money that meant he could do that. I think there was a greater motive behind it, and I felt that it played against the humor constantly. This undertow that was at its best, I think, and innately we tend to have sadness even in our comedies. I mean, you can look at a film such as The Full Monty being full of comedy, but ultimately there is a deep, deep sadness to that film. I think our best filmmaking combines those two things. I think you could even see in something like Faulty Towers. There's for all the humor that's going on. There's ultimately that's when it's at its best.
Yeah, that's what it says. The building two-thirds built and then failed to build the final third. And I say that because there were no classic pieces of dialogue. There was nothing that's going to stick in your memory beyond watching the film. And if you think I'm being a bit harsh, think about with Neil and I. That has got so many classic bits of dialogue
Mm-hmm.
and repartee. It's got so many classic scenes that people still remember now. And I
Yeah,
don't think the Ballad of Wallis Island has anything like that. I think it's one of those things. It's a B plus as opposed to an A type of film. And I think the Detectorists carries off what the Ballad of Wallis Island was trying to do better because I think Mackenzie Crook is a better actor than Tom Basden. And although Tom is good in the film, Mackenzie Crook's better.
my joy with this film was its scale. Was that it?
Hmm.
You made that point earlier. So many British comedies try too hard. This didn't try. This wasn't straining in any way. It was small scale, but I still found it quietly shattering in its own way.
I thought it
I,
was straining for meaning a bit.
Did
Apart
you?
from that, it wasn't straining. You're right. It didn't try too hard, but I thought it didn't quite have as much meaning as it was attempting to have.
Well, we shall have to beg to differ on this, but
Hmm.
it's interesting, that you've caught up with the film now, ruined it for me. So there we go. Never mind.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
only
the clues in the title, the ballad of. I mean, ballads tend to be sad, Graham, even for the comedic
I'm,
element.
I'm only holding up to the ridiculously high standards that
I think that's the most astute comment that you've made
yeah.
about this, because you are holding it up to very, very high
Mm,
standards.
mm,
And
mm.
you compare it, you mentioned Whiskey Galore, you mentioned With Nail and I. I mean, these are of the highest standard. And maybe
Yeah,
it
I
doesn't
agree.
quite match that. I just think it's in
Yeah.
its own way, it's a quiet miracle, because we don't make films like this anymore.
I would have said if in advance of the film, seeing the film, if you'd heard that Tim Key was making a film, how good would it be? It's a hell of a lot better than you would have expected.
Well, there's a positive ending on
There's
that,
not many
Graham.
there's not many comedians, there's not many stand-up comics who
No,
can turn round a solidly good, bittersweet comedy drama film because it's a totally different skill to being a stand-up comic. So
exactly.
by that sense, it is a big achievement.
And I didn't think I was watching a stand-up comedian. I didn't
No,
feel
that's
that.
true. That's true. Yeah.
I've been. I know you questioned his, the levels of acting ability compared to Kerry Mulligan, and I understand that, but I thought it was more than passable. So, Graham, curiosity value here. Harrogate has an orchestra, a chamber orchestra, whose the spelling of this word is Cuore.
Cuore.
Harrogate-based. How do you
I think it's
pronounce it?
Italian for heart.
I'm sure it is,
Hmm.
and so not a very Harrogate word in that case. So this was you were in the second row for the Leeds debut last weekend of the new Harrogate-based. And you're going to say the word again.
Cuore Chamber Orchestra.
Where did you see them, Graham? Where was this?
And at the Howard Assembly Room, not the
Good
Howard
play.
Assembly
Well,
Room. That's
wonderful
actually
venue to see
spotlight all
them.
the week. Eh?
Mm.
Maybe.
Wonderful venue to see them.
Oh
So,
yeah, because
Graham,
it's got the great barrel vaulted ceiling from the
it
Victorian
has,
era, but
it
then it's got
has
all that sort of Scandi wood,
the Scandi wood
which is
that
great
basically looks
sound.
like a series of Magnum sticks from empty Magnums. Yes,
That's
and
true.
I
Yeah,
don't mean
yeah,
gums. I mean the ice creams. Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so how, Graham? I mean, obviously, this is taking them to a different level by performing in Leeds. Um, how did they perform, and
Well, the thing
how did
is,
it come about they were
yeah.
playing in Leeds?
Well, William Dutton is the founder, artistic director,
Oh
and
yes.
conductor,
Mm,
and I think he's in his early 30s, but he looks early 20s. He's very youthful
mm,
and charming and charismatic and
mm,
smiley
mm,
and talented. He's
mm.
done an awful lot in his career since he was a youngster. I think he won BBC Course of the Year award when he was a
Ah,
kid, and he studied in Italy and conducted lots of orchestras.
yeah,
So he wants Yorkshire to have a chamber orchestra that's of the standard of the Halley and
yeah.
has the impact of the Halley, which he knows is a tall order
Big
and requires
ambition
them to
there.
have the best
Mm,
the best musicians, which requires the best money. So he's not doing things by halves. These are all professional musicians. They're all mainly young, but they're from around the world, not just British, and they're all professional and they're all highly talented. I think this is their fourth concert since the launch at the Royal Hall in Harrogate last year, and it was their Leeds debut, which is quite important because
yes.
although they've already got backing from Terry Bramall Foundation,
Oh yeah. Mm,
they need more if they're going to achieve their objectives and
mm,
sustain their lifespan beyond the glorious, explosive first 3 or 4 years. They need to attract even more sponsorship and more backing to
mm,
stay at that level and to grow bigger and bigger, become a true force across all of Yorkshire and then hopefully the rest of Britain. So what William is doing is focus on making it high quality the whole time whilst attracting backing. So the Leeds debut was partly to get new backing, but also partly because his grandfather played a huge role in the setting up of St Gemma's Hospice in Leeds, which is still
ah,
quite an early in the 70s when it was still not that common to have hospices.
that's right.
And
Mm,
so it was also a fundraiser and a profile raiser for St Gemma's Hospice. It was a joint affair. So it meant quite a lot to William personally. And to see the orchestra in action so close up, I think it's about 22, 25 of them,
mm,
right in your face and see how good they are. It reminded me of the time when I used to go to Headingley to see England play cricket in the summer and they were
mm,
playing South Africa.
mm,
And before the match started, they were just players were wandering around and throwing the ball at each other. And they were not even paying attention. And they'd throw the ball like 50 yards without paying attention and
mm.
catch it effortlessly like it was the
Yeah,
easiest thing in the world. It
yeah.
was that level of skill, casual skill, casual
Mm.
talent where being this good wasn't hard work. That's what was so impressive about it.
So are these? They're all. Excuse me. They're all professional musicians.
All nations, quite a few Brits, but from all around the world. And I think I had a quick chat with I think she was Iranian or Turkish, and she had a violin valued at £7.5 million, which I
Oh,
think dated from 1723 and was built in Venice. It's that level of quality we're talking. We're not talking, a good plucky effort by a small Harrogate orchestra. We're talking something ambitious.
will they play at the Harrogate International Festival?
Well, Harkness Festival, as you know, is fantastic at what it does, but it sticks to what it does. It doesn't forage outwards into
No.
anybody else's territory or anybody else's business. So I think I had a coffee with William once, and I did suggest that they try and get involved even in a small way,
Yeah, surely.
just to create some fraternal feelings in Harrogate, because Harrogate's a
Yeah,
major
exactly.
classical town. It's got several orchestras, and Harrogate National Festivals has done so much for classical music for so many
And it's
decades.
got hasn't it got the Delius connection? Didn't Delius live in Harrogate?
Exactly, yeah, yeah, yeah. There's loads of Harrogate's role for a small town in classical music history is massive, and it's still big now. So I think they will try, but Harrogate Festival runs along on very smooth, well organized tram
Mm.
lines. So I don't know what's going to happen there.
It just seems to me to be an open goal that they should be taking part. This is a obviously a blossoming talent, and I would have thought it'd be important to be represented in the hometown festival. I would have thought that would
It's
be
more than
absolutely
blossoming.
logical.
They're not like a new football team that's in the Vauxhall Conference. This is
No.
like a new football team that's already in the Premier League or at
Mm.
least the Championship. That's the standard.
Yeah. Well, we shall. What's the incidentally, Graham? I mean, so classical
Yeah.
repertoire or a
Well, yeah,
combination of
it was
repertoires?
string serenade. It was all string serenades
Yeah.
written for strings from Harry to Dvorak.
Yeah.
But the best moment for me was when they did a piece from 2007 by an Anglo-Italian composer, Elisabetta Brusa, who
Mm.
William knows anyway. And she wrote a great piece called Simply Largo. And it's basically like the quiet, slightly atonal bits in Mahler and these adagios. And it's all about the falling away into silence and then reviving and coming back and falling away. And the orchestra, even though they're young, they had maturity to actually do that possibly the best of all.
Mm.
It wasn't just based on energy or youthful vigor. They had an awful lot of subtlety.
Yeah, absolutely. So, right. Well, we look forward to seeing their further progress, Graham. So, I went to see. I don't often get to the Crucible in Sheffield. I intend to start going to the Crucible more. Really, it really isn't that far travelling down from North Yorkshire to South Yorkshire. This was to see
Yeah.
the Ladies Football Club. It's a
Mm.
Sheffield Theatre's production. Play was originally written by Stefano Massini, and this has been adapted by Tim Firth. Tim, of course, just to give an example, uh, did the script for Our House, the Madness musical, which again, sort of
Oh
a
yeah.
project where he brings in his skill of writing and his comedy skills of writing. Of course, he did the version of Calendar Girls with the songs that were written by Gary Barlow, and Tim did the lyrics to go with Gary's words, and of course the script with that. So he has a history of taking on projects which in part already exist and then bringing his own flavor to it. Now, the story here, it's from wartime, the First World War, and men are away at war. Women take on the jobs in the factories. And in this case, Tim set it in Sheffield, and it's a foundry where the women are working. And they also form, as was the case at various places across the north, football teams. And previous plays have celebrated such people as Lily Parr, one of the most famous early footballers. Amanda Whittington did her football play, I think, called The Invincibles, and Micron Theatre toured the play on that subject, written by Amanda. And so it's not the first, and of course, it's not the first football play. We can think, obviously, of the Damned United and the way football was represented in the Damned United.
Dear
And more
England, about Gareth
recently,
Southgate.
and more
Dear
recently,
England.
the
mm,
Dear England, which I
mm,
think is where the direct parallel will come, in that
mm,
you have, in this case, 11 women. So you have every single, every position on the pitch is being played, as it were. And
mm.
it's a story, therefore, whereas obviously Dear England is actually Gareth's story and the impact that he had both on the culture around the football team and the culture wider than that. This obviously has its political element in that you have women taking on men's work, you have women playing football, and which became hugely popular, incidentally, at that time. And
Till
it
the
has to
FA banned
speak,
it.
yeah, and of course, famously, subsequently to the men returning to the factory jobs, and the women losing that job, and also being banned from playing football for the grounds that it was dangerous to their for potential injury to their ovarian systems, and it could hurt their breasts. All of which, of course, who thinks what absolute nonsense.
Absolute tosh. What
And
about blokes
so
and
so
their
they had
tackle?
no
What about
football till
tackles and tackle?
well, you could point. Yes, I think the number of doubled over gentlemen playing football, I think, will
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
testify
yeah.
to that.
There goes
So,
my family
of
planning.
course, I mean, football was banned for women until 1970, 1971. And
Mm.
just right at the end of the play, the great granddaughter of one of the central character comes on stage. She's a child and she's dressed in the gear of the Lionesses. And it's making that link to actually how powerful women's football has now increasingly become in this country. The story itself, it's that situation. You've got 11 characters. They've all got to have a backstory. And 11 is a lot of people to have a backstory. It's quite
Mm.
rare in
Mm.
drama to be able to focus a
Mm.
story that widely. And I think it is a bit of a problem for the play to have that many stories to tell within it. There are stronger characters, more memorable characters within it. But of course, there's all the teamwork element and some frustrations between them as well. The
Why do
clashes.
you think why do you think they wrote about every character then? What about the whole team?
I think it was symbolically the decision there is that 11 people are in a team. Let's get all their stories together because they're forming a team. And
Mm.
so I can see why that happened. But there were
Mm.
stronger central stories within it. And my favorite comic moment within it was that one of the characters is she's a Marxist and she keeps using the word apotheosis. And now they're deciding whether women will play on the
Mad.
pitch. Where would she
Mm.
be? Where would she be playing, Graham?
On the left wing.
Correct. So Tim Firth
Mm.
could not resist the left wing joke,
Of
and
course,
it's
of course.
of course it's there.
Mm-hmm.
It's an enjoyable play without, I think, hitting the heights, or in particular of Dear England. It's stylish in its presentation. It
Yeah,
uses
I heard that when they're playing football, they get
yes.
that across very atmospherically,
So
very
that so I mean,
strikingly.
there's been different ways to get sport across. I still think the best time I ever saw sport being put across on a stage was John Gobber's Up and Under, where
Oh, but yeah, yeah.
they play
Up and under,
both
yeah, the rugby
so they
one.
play
Yeah.
both teams. So they've got one
Mm.
team's shirt on their front and the other team's shirt on their back.
That is a good idea. But
And
what about I'm Curious Orange? Michael Clark ballet with the fall playing live. That was based on Celtic Rangers in
it
places
was Belter.
playing
That's
football.
Graham, well
Mm.
remembered, and
Mm.
indeed so. And so this is balletic as well. Interestingly, so
Mm.
they go into slow motion movement. A football isn't hit in anger or in a football style at any point within it.
Mm.
It gets motion and it gets commotion within football.
Mm.
It
Mm.
gets a sense of
Mm.
tackling. It gets a sense of the pace of it, even though it's invariably slow motion. But then suddenly they'll all sort of frantically run around as well. So I think from the point of view of the choreography of the piece is really, really strong. I
Yeah.
just think there are so many stories within it that
Yeah.
it makes it sag somewhat.
I'd also say that the central theme, which is, isn't it ridiculous that women were taken to the factory, allowed to play football, then thrown out of the factory and
Mm,
banned from football?
mm,
Well, it's such a open goal in terms of the theme. What can
mhm.
you say about it except that obviously it's totally wrong that women should have been treated like this? And the fact they weren't allowed to play football with the FA is just it's hard to even comprehend now. So I don't see where the drama in that is because it's so clearly stupid
I think that's
and so clearly wrong.
excuse me. I think that's one of the ironies, actually. I think there's perhaps an assumption that people don't know the story of women's football that well, but actually, Lily
Mm,
Parr's quite a familiar name now within football from her story,
mm.
and the Dick Kerr ladies team celebrated in its own way the most famous of women's football teams. So it's not the first time this subject's been done, but interesting when you go into the Crucible, you will find all placed everywhere is all sorts of information about women's football and the history of women's football. It's taken a lot of care from that point of view to introduce it. So up to as goes as far as Hope Powell becoming the England women's
Yeah.
team football manager, for
The weird
example.
thing as well, which won't have been mentioned in the play, is that they wouldn't let women play football, but by 1928, every woman got the vote in the Equal Franchise Act.
Mm.
So by 1928, women could vote, but they couldn't play football, as if football was more important than democracy.
I think I mean the FA would they use these medical reasons as their excuse. I think there were darker things behind it that would be found to be commonplace in the way that in certain countries women are not allowed to play sport at all. I think it shares more with that. Your point that actually this is the play doesn't have it's not revealing something that we don't know already. Well, there are I
Mm.
think the assumption as I say, is because of all the literature that surrounds the play, is there's still an assumption a lot of people don't know that background story. You and I do, but from the point of view for those who don't, it's significant the piece
Also,
was getting standing ovations.
also,
On the night I went, there were
mm,
standing ovations about it
oh,
because
that's good.
maybe because some people didn't know that story.
But most
And so
great,
it
yeah,
go on then.
but most great dramas based on debate. I bet you that the play does not have any characters arguing why women should be banned from football.
Correct. It doesn't do that. I mean,
Well, there you
you
go. So no
use that
debate,
word
no
that's an
drama.
open. You use that word. It's an open goal. I think it's an
Mm,
open goal rather than an own goal. I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't hugely castigate that situation. The fact it is interesting that they basically only play the 11 women in the team. We get a sense of their day job within the factory as well. That is shown as well. And we get a sense of the world that they work in and also of their relationships and also what's going on with the men being away at the war. That side of it is shown within the piece. But
mm,
the fact that it could be angrier as a piece than it is, well, there is the Marxist is angry. There's also
mm.
a woman who's obsessed with Joan of Arc, whose story is prominent within it as
What team
well.
did she play for, Charles?
Joan of Arc,
Yeah, losing team.
um, Graham, we had a bit of politics. So I wasn't expecting
Sorry,
that.
Charles. I'm just being cheeky.
It never mentioned what shirt she wore, the number 9 shirt when she was being burnt. I don't think so, Graham. So
Mm,
rough
mm,
flippant
mm.
see there.
I'd also
So
like to know
I think,
how
look,
how
I
the
think it's
Crucible Theatre
enjoyable.
does play. How does the Crucible Theatre manage to do plays when there's snooker happening? That's what I want to know.
You've decided to be even more ridiculous. Well, it's good to have a different sport within the Crucible. That other thing, the
Mm,
word
mm.
Crucible, of course, adds to the drama. That shape of the theatre, of course, suits this
Yeah.
as well. There is a sense of an amphitheatre about it. So I enjoyed it, but I think it had certain fault lines within it. I would still urge people to go and see it because it's always good to encourage new writing. And also, Graham, the last point to make:
Yeah.
how often do you see a
Mm.
play where all the characters are played by women and it's 11 women playing lead roles each? Now that is rare in
Well,
drama, and that's not me being patronizing, but
no,
actually
no.
that's important in itself as well.
I would say that in terms of theatre musical, stage musicals,
Mm-hmm,
the common theme when I've thought that a play didn't totally work
mm-hmm.
or a musical didn't totally work is when it has too much plot and too much going on. That's usually the common theme. The more you pack in, the
Yeah,
less clear the drama becomes.
this pact had to pack in a lot because of so many
Mm,
characters within it,
mm.
but it was very
It-
stylish to look at.
yeah,
I love the design within it, which had lights lighting up underneath as they were playing football. That was an unusual stage design effect that was very effective. Also, they used video projections. So rather than jumpers for goalposts, you had video projections for goalposts.
okay. Yeah, it sounds interesting. It definitely sounds worth your an hour and a half or 2.5 hours of
Yeah,
your time for sure.
and my £9.20 or something for parking
Wow.
and Q Park. So thank you, Q Park, for another miserable city not feeling that the nighttime economy might benefit from just charging a rather less than that. You greedy dot dot
Are,
dot.
are we going to have Parking the musical?
We are not having Parking the musical, but there's enough people who get obsessed by parking and the fact that it's become.
Mm.
How come Hull will pay? You just pay a quid in Hull. Is Hull giving a message?
Because
Doncaster, you pay
Hull
about
needs
a
every
quid in
visitor it can
Doncaster.
get. Hull needs to support people
Did I
because
hear you
it's
just
got
say
the
the words that
alternative.
Doncaster and Hull need everyone they can get?
Yeah,
I thought I
yeah,
heard
they
you say
do.
that, Graham. That's still not a
It's true
reason.
though. It's true.
That's
It's
not a reason
mm.
because Sheffield is more attractive and York is more attractive to exploit those who are coming to the city. Anyway,
all
we
the
move on.
all local authorities are desperately short of money, so they're looking to scramble, pinch as much money back from the public as they can. It's just a bad time for that sort of
While
thing.
bumping up the number of people in York that are being paid more than 100,000 on the council from one to I think six new ones have just been now being paid
Well,
more than
yeah, yeah, I
£100,000.
agree.
So would that be to do with the
Yeah,
parking as well, Graham? I just wonder.
mm, I agree. I agree.
Anyway, Graham, I am intrigued by
Hmm.
this.
What's that?
You dare to give Jason Fox of SAS Who Dares Wins. You gave him. This is risky, Graham. You gave him a mild telling off. Where and how? Was this in an
Yeah,
interview
we're
or in
talking
person?
mild. I mean, Jason Fox is the ex-SAS guy who's one of the main people in SS Who Dares Wins on Channel 4.
He's
Highly
coming to
successful,
York. He's coming to York.
long-running series. And
Mm,
he's ex-Royal Marines,
mm.
ex-Special Forces sergeant. He looks a really tough bloke
He's
on the
coming to the
TV.
Barbican, Graham. I wouldn't be
And
risking
yeah,
falling out with him.
well, he's coming to the Royal Hall in Harrogate on March
Oh.
17th, which obviously is early next week. And the reason I risked falling out with him is because that's what I'm like. But also, it was a phone interview, and I figured he can't
Uh,
actually physically get me on the phone.
safety
So
down the line.
exactly. I can always run away.
Graham, that's not how the SA works. They find a way to get you.
Well, he's also written quite a few books, and he's actually articulate and good to talk to. So I had a good range in chat with him for the Harrogate Advertiser, but
Mm.
I thought, well, I'll chance my hand. So I said, I've got a bone to pick with you. He
Oh,
said, what do you mean? I said, well, your show SS Who Dares Win. Well, my wife, I got her into running years ago, and then she herself got into fell running and ultra marathons. But after watching SS Who Dares Wins, she went to Antarctica and bivouacked overnight on the ice. She went 17,000 feet up the Himalayas and slept in a tent for 5 nights at minus 17 degrees. And she wouldn't have done any of that stuff if she hadn't seen your program.
Well, how did he
And there's
react,
this,
Graham? Because he would
well,
surely be saying, well, that's exactly what should be happening.
well, he says, yeah, I'll take the rap. He says, I'll take the rap for that.
Good
And he
answer,
says,
Graham.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub production.